Some say abandoning Jupiter Station would be a huge step back for humanity's future in space. Others believe it's too risky to keep it. This debate will continue, but right now, the priority is clear. We need to fix the station, get everyone from the lifeboat pods back on board, and restore it to full operational status. First things first, the repair crews spent days stabilizing the station's core systems. Life support is back online, which is a massive relief. Now, they're focused on the thrusters. We need those powerful engines to pull the entire station out of Jupiter's immense gravitational field and move it to a safe distance. Once we're clear of the danger, and all 10,000 residents are safely back inside, then, and only then, can we truly decide the ultimate fate of Jupiter Station. Initial reports are still being pieced together, but our sources within the Interplanetary Alliance suggest a catastrophic failure in the station as waste recycling system. This seemingly minor issue triggered a cascade failure throughout the life support network, immediately threatening all 10,000 lives aboard. The first thought was a full-scale evacuation, splitting the crew between the Io colony and the lunar base. However, this would dangerously overextend the life support systems on both locations, putting even more people at risk. On top of that, there aren't enough ready transports to get everyone away in time. It seems the only option they have is a desperate one. Fix the station while everyone is still aboard. Not the best plan, but it's the only one they've got. Stay tuned as we bring you more updates. The life support and environmental systems on this station are complex, closed loop, designed to sustain 10,000 people. We have oxygen reservoir tanks that can give everyone 7 days of breathable air. This is meant to buy time for a repair crew to fix any problem, or to evacuate everyone off the station. But that was when the Interplanetary Alliance had a presence in the system. Right now, the bulk of the fleet is off fighting a border conflict. The only ships available are tiny patrol boats, which can only take 100 people at a time. As the saying goes, little boat, big punch. Anyway, these closed-loop systems are vital to the station's ecosystem. Everything is connected. If one system fails and can't be repaired quickly, you'll create a cascade failure, leading to power fluctuations, atmospheric imbalances, and maybe even a core breach. Imagine this. 10,000 people, a mix of brilliant scientists, engineers, and their families, suddenly trapped inside a ticking time bomb. The first thing to go is the life support system. The air gets stale, then toxic. Every breath becomes a struggle, a shallow gasp for oxygen that isn't there. But it gets so much worse. Try to flush the toilet, and you're greeted with a literal geyser of human waste shooting to the ceiling. You can't even shower to wash it off, because that's connected to the same broken system. And slowly, inevitably, you'd fall unconscious and suffocate. So you're in space, and you've got to, go. You can't just flush it out into the void. Why? Well, for one, it creates a massive navigational hazard for other ships. And let's be honest, it's also incredibly gross. Imagine being the person who has to wash that stuff off the nose cone. No, thank you. Now, let's talk about the air you're breathing. The oxygen reservoir gets tapped into to keep things fresh. But here's a fun fact about humans. When we think we're losing oxygen, we start to hyperventilate. This pumps even more carbon dioxide into the air. And if you're on a station like Jupiter, you might have fountains spewing hydrogen sulfide and methane. Suddenly, you're dealing with a cocktail of stinky, stinky horrors. Space travel isn't always glamorous. The air on Jupiter Station was turning toxic. Water supplies were failing. The very hull of their home in space was under threat. This wasn't an alien invasion or an asteroid strike. The engineers had planned for those. No, this was something else. Something that pushed every emergency protocol to its breaking point. Evacuation felt impossible. The vast distance and limited ships made any rescue a logistical nightmare. And then, the distress signal blared across the solar system. The first to answer? The United States Space Force. Often a punchline back on Earth, their role now is anything but trivial. The Deep Space Patrol vessel, the USSF Endeavour, was on a long-range mission nearby. Without hesitation, they diverted course, racing towards Jupiter Station and the thousands of lives hanging in the balance. This wasn't just a simple rescue. The mission, codenamed Operation Jupiter Station, had two equally critical objectives. First and most urgent was to stabilize the station and save the lives on board. This involved a daring plan to deliver emergency life support systems, also known as pods or lifeboats. Not everyone could fit, so they looked to an old Earth maritime tradition: women and children first. The idea was that if they could get enough of them out of harm's way, they'd have a chance to continue. These pods were one of the first contingency plans ever created for the vacuum of space. Each one is a self-contained environment where people could survive for months. They have their own power sources, small maneuvering thrusters, and everything needed to provide fresh air, water, and power for those aboard. Imagine this. You're on a space station, the Endeavour, hurtling towards Jupiter. Right beside you, the planet's massive gravity is trying to pull you in like a cosmic vacuum cleaner. To make matters worse, a recent solar storm knocked out your station's thrusters, and you're slowly losing stability. If you get caught in Jupiter's pull, the station will be crushed like a soda can. This is the terrifying reality the crew of the Endeavour faced. They had to navigate this gravitational minefield to dock with the failing station. It was a race against time, with oxygen levels dropping fast. They performed incredibly high-risk maneuvers, attaching lifeboat pods to the station, letting them fill with survivors, then hot-swapping them out. They'd pull the full lifeboats to safety, then dive back into the storm. Think of a surgeon performing a delicate operation on a moving target during an earthquake. That's the kind of precision we're talking about. The pilots and engineers on this mission are truly heroes. Saving the people was only half the battle. The second objective of the operation is arguably even more complex: preventing a navigational disaster in space. We have to save the space station from crashing into Jupiter itself, restore its life support, and get personnel onto the station who can do all of this in a very short amount of time. Once that's all completed, the Endeavour needs to hook onto the station and help thrust it back into its original orbit. This two-pronged approach, a humanitarian rescue combined with environmental intervention, really showcases the evolving role of a spacefaring military. It's not just about orbital warfare anymore. It's about protection, stewardship, and crisis response on an interplanetary scale. The Endeavour was the only responder. Other patrol vessels are scattered across the solar system, racing to get here, but it'll take them anywhere from 2 hours to 3 days to arrive. This crisis has been a wake-up call for all of us. As we push further into the cosmos, building these incredible off-world habitats, we must be prepared for all the risks. The technology must be robust, the safety protocols flawless, and we need a highly trained force ready to respond when things go wrong. It reminds me of a crazy story from World War II. A German submarine sank to the bottom of the ocean because someone flushed the toilet. Yes, you heard that right. Something as simple as flushing a toilet. They had an overcomplicated system that wasn't robust enough, and they didn't have a contingency plan. Their solution? They trained someone to be a full-time toilet flusher. I know, it sounds nuts. But these are the kinds of lessons humanity needs to learn from. We can't afford to overlook the small details. Imagine floating in the vastness of space, a tiny speck against the swirling, magnificent backdrop of Jupiter. For the 10,000 souls living and working on Jupiter Station, this was their reality. A marvel of human engineering, a beacon of our ambition to reach the stars. But just last week, this beacon of hope became the epicenter of a potential catastrophe of unimaginable scale. Welcome back to my channel. Today, we're diving deep into a story that has been unfolding in our system but hits incredibly close to home: the Jupiter Station crisis. What started as a routine maintenance check spiraled into a full-blown emergency, threatening not just the lives aboard the station, but also risking a navigational disaster across the inner planets. The station's primary fusion core malfunctioned, causing a cascade failure that knocked out its propulsion systems. Stay tuned as we break down what went wrong and the heroic efforts underway to avert disaster. Help has arrived for the Endeavour. A second patrol ship, the Ulysses, is now on the scene. Together, these two ships have a plan to save the station without overstressing its thrusters. The crews performed a daring spacewalk, connecting heavy-duty tethers from their ships directly to the station's frame. With the cables securely in place, it was time for the station's engineers to run final diagnostics. They tested every single thruster, ensuring full power and zero chance of failure. This was a one-shot deal. Losing even a single thruster would mean mission failure. After a tense wait, the engineering team gave the green light. The Endeavour and Ulysses were ready. Now, just one question remained: who would lead the operation? The commanders decided to leave it to chance, flipping a coin to determine who would guide the station back into a stable orbit around Jupiter. The coin toss gave the commander of the Ulysses the choice. His mission: haul Jupiter Station back into a stable orbit. The tethers were locked. All stations reported ready. With a firm command, he ordered the station's own thrusters to maximum power. The chief engineer confirmed, and a moment later, the station was anchored. Its descent into Jupiter's crushing atmosphere halted. Now it was the Endeavour and Ulysses's turn. They began powering forward, the tethers pulling taut. They incrementally increased engine power, pushing, until they were at full throttle. The massive station lurched, inching forward with agonizing slowness. But even with their combined might, it was a losing battle. They just didn't have enough power to escape Jupiter's immense gravitational pull. On both bridges, the orders were given. Thrusters ignited, and slowly, painstakingly, the station began to pull away. At this rate, it would take 2 full days to reach a safe orbit. The Ulysses commander ordered the station to keep its thrusters at 50%, and then told both patrol ships to halt. They needed to link up the stone to add its power to the pull. The Endeavour acknowledged, and both ships paused their engines, leaving the station to push on its own for a moment. With that precious time, the crews suited up for another spacewalk. Their mission was to connect a heavy-duty tether to the patrol vessel's stone. It was a delicate, time-consuming dance in zero gravity, but finally the stone was securely linked to the station. Then the order came from the Ulysses commander: all craft, move forward, stretch those tethers tight. Once the lines were taut, he gave the next command: engines to full power. He also hailed Jupiter Station, instructing them to maintain 50% thruster power. The station acknowledged. The combined fleet of ships roared to life, their engines firing at maximum output. The massive station shuddered and began to move. The commander then ordered Jupiter Station to bring its own thrusters to full power. With that final, colossal push, they broke free from the planet's gravitational grip. The station was finally on its way. After several long minutes, the station was finally brought back to its original location. Once it was gravitationally anchored, the patrol vessels could at last release their grasp. You could almost feel the collective sigh of relief as the tethers went slack. The ships detached the lines from their own hulls, and the crews performed another daring spacewalk to disconnect them from the station itself. With the massive structure secure, the 3 ships pulled back to a safe distance to check for any damage they might have sustained. Thankfully, they were all clear. The stone immediately sent additional repair crews to the station to begin the long process of fixing the damage. Meanwhile, the 3 ships began the real rescue mission, rounding up all the personnel scattered in lifeboat pods. They docked with each pod, taking on 100 people at a time, and ferried them back to the safety of the station. Once everyone was aboard, medical teams were brought in to treat the injured. After the crisis, Jupiter Station is finally stable. Earth sent a massive engineering team from the Mars colony, bringing all the parts needed for a full systems overhaul. The injured have healed, and a sense of normalcy is returning. But now we face a new question. What's the future for Jupiter Station? It's an indispensable piece of technology, but its location is becoming, well, a bit redundant. With thriving colonies and deeper space outposts, this scientific research station, much like the one on Mars, is often overlooked. So, what's the plan? Humanity is setting its sights on the Jovian system, the closest one to our own. It's uninhabited, wiped clean by a past coronal mass ejection, and no other species seems interested. So we're making a bold move. We're relocating Jupiter Station to become the cornerstone of our expansion into the Jovian system, our new base of operations among the stars. With the station's primary systems back online, the real work began. Engineers started fanning out. Their destination, the structural skeleton of the station itself. They entered lab after lab, heading straight for small, unassuming access hatches set into the walls. These weren't for storage. They were gateways into the very bones of the station, the space between the inner and outer hulls. Scientists, busy with their own experiments, couldn't help but watch with curiosity as one by one the engineers popped open these hatches and vanished into the walls. An hour passed, then another. The labs were filled with a strange, quiet tension. Researchers tried to focus, but their eyes kept flicking back to the open doorways, waiting. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the engineers emerged, covered in dust, but they said nothing. They just sealed the hatches and walked out, leaving a wake of unanswered questions. What did they find in there? Dan, the lead scientist, trudged into the station's briefing room, dreading another mind-numbing morning meeting. Representatives from every department were already there. Engineering, medical, security, you name it. The usual drone began, a symphony of routine reports and minor issues from across the sprawling station. Dan just sat there, quiet, letting the noise wash over him. Suddenly, he couldn't take it anymore. He slammed his hand on the table, silencing the room. Why is no one talking about the strange people climbing in and out of the walls? He demanded. Everyone stared, confused. Doesn't anyone think that's a little odd? His gaze locked onto the station commander, who had remained silent. Commander, do you have anything to say about this? The commander paused, slowly crossed his legs, and clasped his hands. He looked calmly at Dan and asked, So, what topic did you want to cover today? It's obvious you've forgotten. Just a couple of weeks ago, we narrowly averted a station-wide disaster that could have killed every single one of us. Earth sent engineers here, pulling them from other station colonies, to help us inspect this entire facility. We have to make absolutely sure that never, ever happens again. For years, Earth neglected this station, but they're not going to make that mistake anymore. They finally realize that their neglect creates disasters waiting to happen. All these engineers are doing is inspecting the structural stability of the station, trying to spot any potential problems before they become critical. The whole idea is to identify and fix issues early on. Dan sat there, listening to the commander. It all sounded reasonable, even responsible. But then, Dan brought up the communications he'd intercepted about the border battle in the Jovian system, and the request for a weapons platform capable of sustained bombardment. The commander just sat there, listening intently. His gaze shifted to Dan, his eyes narrowing slightly. He asked, How did you know about the border wars? A heavy silence filled the room. Dan froze for a moment, the blood draining from his face. He'd messed up big time? He stammered, trying to recover, saying he must have received some messages by mistake. The commander's look swept across everyone present. These are top-secret matters, he stated, his voice like cold steel. What you've just learned about this war does not go beyond these walls. If you leak it, That is treason, punishable by a military tribunal. The sentence is death." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "Do you understand?" A chorus of agreements echoed back. He then confirmed their worst fears. The border wars in the Jovian system were real, and they were going badly. "We need a platform," he continued, "for sustained weapons fire. Something we can mount heavy cannons on." Just as I was about to question him further, Dan cut in, gesturing towards the schematics. "Commander, is this platform our station?" The commander nodded grimly. "Yes, that's the plan." "The engineers you've seen crawling through the walls? They're assessing the structural integrity. The original blueprints claim it can handle heavy cannons, but reality is different. Constant radiation bombardment might have weakened the framework over the years. We have to be certain it can take the recoil." We all sat there, completely stunned, the weight of his words slowly sinking in. Finally, Dan broke the silence. "Are we going to war? My people are scientists." The commander let out a dry chuckle. "No, Dan, your people won't go to war. The station's crew will." I asked him, "Then what about us? Where do we go?" He held up a hand to calm us. "You'll be reassigned to other research facilities, safely away from the front lines." He just kept stumbling over his words. "What about you guys?" "What? I've made some real good friends here. To see them go off to war, wondering if they'll come back, I just ... I just don't know." The commander calmed him down again, saying, "It isn't even known yet if we're going to battle. Even if we do, it'll take weeks for us to retrofit this station." That seemed to settle him down. Just then, a knock came from the hatch. The guard opened it, and Earth's chief engineer entered the meeting room. The commander looked up and asked everyone to be excused, except for the station's chief engineer and the XO. Everyone else got up and left. Earth's chief engineer sat down and said, "The report is ready." The XO told him to spill it. He opened his data pad and began explaining how they conducted the investigation. The XO was blunt. He didn't care how. He just needed to know. Can the station handle the relentless bombardment? The constant, bone-shaking vibration from the heavy cannons firing over and over? Earth's chief engineer, looking surprisingly confident, simply nodded. "Yes," he confirmed, "the station can take it. In fact, it can take more than we expected. With the reinforced hull plating and the new force shields, we could probably withstand a supermassive coronal mass ejection." The commander's expression hardened. "Okay," he said, his voice low. "We're going to war." He turned to the XO. "Make the necessary preparations." The XO acknowledged, stood, and left without a word. But the chief engineer remained, sinking back into his chair, a look of pure fear on his face. "What's wrong?" the commander asked. The engineer looked up, his voice barely a whisper. "I've never been in a war before. I was hoping I could finish my career without ever seeing one." The commander just nodded his head. He told us he was in Earth's first war, from start to finish. 10 years. 10 long years of fighting, going from one battle straight into another, never even a chance to catch our breath. Then, for some reason, they stopped and just left. We never knew why they stopped. We could only guess. Maybe they figured we were in a stalemate and couldn't win without taking even heavier losses. Or maybe they found an easier target somewhere else. The chief engineer asked the commander, "How did you get through it all?" The commander looked at him and said, "One mission at a time. That's it. One day at a time. When we got shore leave, I took it. I found a beach or some place with sun and water. Then I just sat there and absorbed it all. That's how I did it. Chief, you will find your escape when the time comes. But Commander, what if I don't? What if I go stir crazy out there?" The commander leaned back in his chair, taking a moment before he spoke. "Some people do that, but you will be too busy to notice. I believe you will be fine. And if you aren't, my door is always open." We cannot lose you, Chief." With that, the chief got up and walked out of the office. The commander spun his chair around, gazing out the viewing window at the vast expanse of space. He pondered what could be next for them, for the station. The future is uncertain. What do you think will happen next? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Phantom Static, where the phantoms speak through the static.